in a moment of frustration, I kind of snapped a little bit and went back to my wife and apologized. I anticipated her to say it's okay. And and she didn't.
This is like a really cool process of like acknowledging the things that are hard, challenging, and that are happening to you, to then shift into like, how are these things happening for me?
To be grateful for something doesn't mean you had to have loved it or love it. Like you can be grateful for some really shitty circumstances. I don't see those two having to be like one and the same.
Welcome to the Everyday Leader Podcast. Leadership is a choice. Join me, Matt, and my co-hosts Drew and Tate each episode as we break down how to lead powerfully in your family, team, and organization.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Everyday Leader Podcast. I am excited to be here with Tate and Drew today as we discuss gratitude and leadership together. And we were joking before we hit record that we talked about gratitude last year for a Thanksgiving episode, and even on a recent episode, we talked a lot about gratitude with a guest. And so we promised to take a little bit of a different spin. This is not just going to be more of a, hey, be grateful and it'll change your life podcast. We want to dive into how gratitude can really actually empower and impact a leader and their leadership, and how we can choose to be grateful for some of the things that don't seem like we ought to be grateful for them, some of the challenges that we face and things that come up. So yeah, excited to jump into our conversation today. Tate and Drew, thanks for being here. Would love to, let's just start there. What are some of the things that we are feeling grateful for, that we can recognize gratitude for, that maybe are a little bit unconventional or would not normally be viewed as something to be grateful for by the world or by society?
So I may start with a little bigger picture of kind of that concept, with the whole idea of, maybe wishing things were different when we were younger, wishing that this didn't happen to us, wishing that we didn't have to experience this as we grow. And over the last few years, I've come to realize that, no, I am grateful for those things, because without those, I wouldn't be the same person I am today. And it's hard to say whether you'd be better or worse, but I have no doubt that challenging circumstances are where learning happens. And so, yeah, as a whole encompassing thing, I'm grateful for what I've experienced and what I've been through. And
yeah, it's awesome. The foundation here for leadership is that you always have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the whole thing here, is that challenging circumstances happen and we get to decide how we respond, how we use those, let those teach us, how we respond to those. And so, yeah, that's great, Tate. It is useful, right? Like, it's productive to think back and say, wow, that was challenging. And look what it taught me.
Mm-hmm.
Look what I experienced, learned, overcame because of those circumstances that were outside of my control.
Mm-hmm.
Tate, what I love about that is, how often do you hear someone complain about their childhood, blame their parents for
Mm-hmm.
the problems in their life, or things like that? And I think that's a great perspective to be grateful. Even if it wasn't picture perfect, to be grateful. Yeah. Hey, this is how I was raised. This is how I grew up, and this shaped who I am. I like that.
And I don't want to dive too off into left field on this, but it kind of summarizes in the aspect of, I think, people that struggle with that and recognizing, hey, I am who I am because of my circumstances. Fundamentally, and this may be controversial a little bit, but do you like yourself in this moment? Do you like who you are today? And if the answer is no, then you're probably going to blame a lot of different things and not be able to be in that place of gratefulness. And not to say that we don't all grow and make mistakes, that, we're probably hard on ourselves, shoot ourselves to death. And that's not necessarily a helpful thing either. And there's a lot to love about each and every one of us. And I think the first person we need to love outside of our Creator is ourselves.
Yeah. 100%.
Right, so I'm going to go off that, Tate, and share mine, Matt. And I told you I'd wait to share this on here. So the thing I said I was grateful for, and it raised Matt's eyebrows before we started the podcast, but I said chastisement is something I'm grateful for as of late. So let me give a little context and share why I'm saying that. I've had 2 instances the last couple weeks where I've felt a little bit of chastisement. One from God, one from my wife. And so one was in our church, often members of the congregation get asked to speak. And so my daughter and I were asked to speak on this idea of one fold and one shepherd. And I was studying for this and read a quote by a leader of our church that talked about the gathering that's going to take place in the last days, God gathering his children, the gathering of Israel. And he talked about that being the most important work. And I heard that and thought, how many things in my life do I view as more important than like God's work right now? And I often will say what's God's most important, my family's most important. And often when I say that, it's true. And sometimes I say that and it's not really the priority in my life. And so as I read that, it was like there was a lot of things on my plate that I had put at a higher importance than that. And it was just this humbling moment of like, you dummy, you're not putting God's work first in your life right now. And then even more humbling, had a conversation with my wife a couple weeks ago, and I had responded in a way that wasn't very productive and useful to her. In a moment of frustration, I kind of snapped a little bit and went back to my wife and apologized and told her all the reasons I just had been feeling the way I was and why I acted the way I was. And I anticipated her to say it's okay and to tell me that it was all right and I was justified in how I was responded. And she didn't. She told me some ways I wasn't showing up for her as a great husband, how I wasn't showing up as a great father. And I'm really grateful she did. It was really hard to hear, and it was true. And so the reason, back to this, why I'm grateful for chastisement, I was reading in Proverbs a few days later, Proverbs 3:5. Everybody knows about trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. A part that's come to mean a lot more to me is after that, it talks about the substance you'll get from the Lord if you trust him and honor him. And never had really thought much about this, but because of those 2 things that happened last couple of weeks, this verse in 12, for whom the Lord, it says 11, my son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. So I just thought, well, I'm grateful. He's chastising me because he loves me. So that's what I'm grateful for. Despite chastisement sounding scary, or I don't know what came to your mind when I said that earlier, Matt.
No, it makes me think of the message that's been, repeatedly that I keep hearing, either at church or through reading, and it's basically our goal should be to, like you said, follow God's plan for us. And with that, a lot of times it means giving up on our plans, and that we're, and sometimes he requires that of us to kind of get centered and focused on what truly is important. And that doesn't mean don't have goals, don't have plans. But it means kind of humble yourself in what you're really trying to accomplish, the impact you're trying to make. Are you doing God's will?
Yeah, it's so good. And look, this is a really great example, Drew, of like feeling those things like coming from God. And this is a very real principle, like you shared, you experience in your home. Your kids will oftentimes show you exactly what's not really working with the way you're showing up. Hopefully you're surrounded yourself with business partners, team members that will also at times show you that. And it's a really powerful leadership trait to be able to like take that and see what there is to be seen in it, and then make some shifts and have a response that's useful to that. And way easier said than done. It's not natural for me to be really open to people's correction, to be honest. And, most people, maybe a lot of people are like, well, yeah, like, is it really great for, does anyone love it? And yeah, I think it's a practice. It's something that it's a muscle that can be developed, like an openness and awareness, a willingness to listen, to hear, and to acknowledge. Yeah, hey, that hasn't been working great, and I could be better.
I think it's an important thing. And for me, I see it in myself and my kids, kind of like you're saying, and that when there is that correction coming towards us, the first reaction being wanting to justify or explain yourself. And it's like, I see it really well when I'm talking to my kids, trying to correct them. And it's like, no, just stop. We can talk about this later. You can explain it later if you want, but I need you to hear what I'm saying and just set in that. And I think that's important, for me to take that pause and set in it. And I don't mean pause like 10 seconds, like really set in it and hear what that person's trying to say and illustrate to you. Another thought that comes to mind, and Drew actually heard this yesterday in a meeting we were having, but at church this weekend, they were telling a story of a really influential pastor, and they were interviewing him. And one of the questions they asked him is, what's the key to being a successful leader? And he gave a 2-word response, and it was good decisions. And they kind of sat there for a second. They go, well, how do you make good decisions? He said, experience. And they're going, okay, great. Like, that's helpful. And then they go, well, how do you get experience? And his only answer was bad decisions. And so, kind of building on the concept that we're talking about, it's that experience and being grateful for those things, because that's what gets you to where you're really wanting to be. You don't just wake up one day and have all the answers. Like, you got to go put in the reps. I mean,
yeah.
I don't see any way around it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you said it this way, Matt, but I like to think I'm right most of the time. And then maybe you didn't say it that way, but that's how I'm hearing it or describing it myself. And like that experience I shared, like I think one, like, leadership is sometimes being able to hear that. And I remember as my wife was telling me that, just listen. You don't need to respond, listen. And I'm also grateful, like, she was willing to say that to me, because I know it probably, as hard as it was for me to hear, I know it wasn't easy for her to say either. And so grateful for that. And yeah, Tate, I think bad decisions often create experience and lead to good decisions. And hopefully when you make bad decisions, you're able to learn from them, so that experience can be good decisions. I guess if you don't learn from it, it's a failure. But
yeah, well, the same repeated bad decision, I mean, yeah, you got to kind of reevaluate possibly.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the difference, because one of the things that I've seen in some people and some leaders, and I think I come across this way sometimes to my kids and to Kelsey, is like, well, just be happy, just be grateful, like, I'm not saying suck it up, but I'm basically like, that's kind of what I'm insinuating, like, let this teach you, like. And so I think there's a difference between like a powerful and useful approach to gratitude for challenging things is like to recognize that they're challenging, to acknowledge, hey, this is something that I wasn't planning on. This is something that's really pressing me or putting pressure on me, or the circumstance is real and I can acknowledge that it's challenging. That's different to me than pretend like it's not challenging, pretend like nothing bad ever happens, pretend like we don't struggle, right? That's what I think society sometimes calls like toxic positivity, which I'm not an expert on. I don't know who coined that. I've just heard a lot of people talk about it, that it can sometimes rub people the wrong way when they're like, well, but the leader of our team or at work, like, you just brush everything under the rug, and it's like the solution is like pretend like there's not a problem. And so think it's really important for us to recognize the distinction there, that like acknowledging circumstances that are challenging is actually really helpful to work through them. And we can choose to be grateful for the challenges and choose to be grateful for what they can teach us.
Mhm.
And to me, that's powerful versus either complaining about them and kind of choosing not to have them teach us, and or pretending like they're not challenging.
Something that comes to mind, I think it's really helpful, kind of piggybacking off of that, is I didn't really, I mean, we all hear different feelings, and this is going to be kind of a touchy-feely kind of section of this, and some people agree with that, some people don't, and that's fine. But emotions are a real thing. And I think recognizing beyond just, I don't feel good, I feel bad, I don't like this, and really getting to the core of what is it you're experiencing? Are you disappointed? Are you frustrated? What those are. I mean, for me, it really helps me to understand, okay, if I'm frustrated, why am I frustrated? And then you can start to make those behavioral or mindset changes around some of that. If you can understand at a core of what more it is. I mean, describe it as best you can, essentially. And for me, it's not a touchy-feely thing. It's an understanding for myself of, okay, if I can understand what this is, I can address it. I
Yeah.
can grow. I can become better. And
Yeah.
I point that out, and I started to say earlier on that, those are concepts that I didn't really learn until I was a young adult. Like they hadn't even been presented to me. And for some of our listeners, they've probably heard a lot of it. It's becoming more common, I feel, and maybe it's just the world I live in. And it's so important, especially for those of us that have kids, to, if nothing else, help them identify what it is they're feeling.
Yeah. So I have an example to share that I think will demonstrate what you're talking about, Tate, and hopefully be really useful to you as a listener, like of how this can happen in real life and what this can look like. So when I, like, for example, like let's say one of my kids is showing up in a certain way, right? Presenting a circumstance.
Mhm.
And well, I can even just use an example, right? Like refusal to take a shower. I'm sure none of you can relate.
Yeah, I
kids
do it
will-
every night.
Yeah. So again, it's like if I'm like, I've noticed that sometimes if I start to believe, or if I'm latched onto the belief in that situation that like this is ridiculous, okay, then I'm feeling frustrated. Like now my emotion coming from the belief is, and my thoughts around like this is unbelievable, this is not supposed to be happening. Now I'm frustrated. Whereas if I can stop and like feel that and recognize that and zoom out to your point, Tate, and be like, okay, actually, everything's exactly the way it's supposed to be because 9-year-olds hate taking showers.
Mhm.
And not because they're bad kids, but because they love living life, and taking a shower feels like an interruption to their most ideal evening of fun and family time. And so in that moment, I can actually remind myself of that. And now the emotion is like way more peaceful and calm because the behavior I'm seeing is actually exactly the way it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
And now like the gratitude can kick in where it's like, wow, I'm actually really grateful for this moment where I get to practice being a powerful leader.
Mhm.
And like, if it wasn't for this circumstance, I actually would not be practicing this right now. And
Well, I'm glad you circled back and kind of tied that in, because that's kind of where I was going with it. And I don't know if I tied it back to that really well, but being able to recognize those, for at least me, I'm grateful for those feelings and the understanding of those feelings. And as weird as that sounds, like it's where growth comes from.
yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, real quick, Drew, I just feel like that's like, for me, that's the thing right now that I could say or share in this conversation that I'm grateful for that's challenging is like my kids. I'm grateful for the circumstances that they create sometimes that are extremely challenging, because it teaches me how to lead like Jesus. Like it gives me the opportunity to figure that out in a very like real, close to home way. That otherwise I wouldn't have the opportunity to learn in that way. So
I have a real strong belief that, whether it's little circumstances like that or big ones, that God creates the circumstances that we need to experience to learn the lessons we need to. And, it's almost like the joke of praying for patience. It's like, okay, we're going to give you a lot of chance to be patient here. And kind of the same idea.
I don't pray for that, Tate. Well, one thing I think that's good to point out about all of this too, that I've come to recognize, especially with this idea of emotions or sometimes difficult circumstances, almost the worst thing you can do is resist it. Like if you are feeling frustrated and you resist it, if you're feeling depressed and you try to resist it, if you're feeling, I don't know, nervous and you try to resist it, you'll just find more of it. And like there's something powerful in acknowledging what you're feeling, labeling it. Sometimes just saying out loud, I feel kind of depressed, or I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling anxious. Like sometimes just doing that will make those feelings subside because you're almost acknowledging and accepting it. Which it seems funny, like how does that work? I don't know how it works. I don't know the science behind it, and I know that it does. And it's like, to your point, Matt, about your kids, like you can resist that they want to take a shower, and that just creates more of this like, I want to beat you, child type of feeling inside. It's like, hey, you can just acknowledge, hey, this is what it is, and like this is why, like, and I think we've talked about this between all of us. Like, it's like, is the real work in your son, or is the real work in yourself when you're feeling that way about what your child's acting?
Well, that's what I think is cool about circumstances is it can be both. Right. They're learning as much as we are, or vice versa. Maybe we're learning more. But kind of piggybacking on what you were highlighting there, Drew, I think it's a good example too of what Matt mentioned earlier with the toxic positivity is, to me, you're not acknowledging those feelings when you're just like, oh yeah, that sucks. Yeah, but it's such a great day. And you're basically trying to avoid that feeling and resisting it. And so for me, that's another example of that.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think I was used to be part of a real estate group, a group of real estate investors. And a lot of people in this group, they'd come together to learn, and they'd often do deals together. And as you can imagine, when you get large groups of people doing real estate together, sometimes things go wrong and people don't do what they'll say. And, or there's just things that go wrong, right? Like sometimes it's no one's fault and the circumstances are things that go wrong. And I remember there was these people in this group, they were doing a lot of real estate, but there was a lot of frustration with them because one of their personal religious beliefs was not to have confrontation. And they used that belief not to acknowledge, like they would then like not acknowledge things and avoid the conversations. And it's like avoiding it only made it worse. It's like, you can acknowledge something and not have a blow up confrontational experience too. So.
That makes me think of something I think is really relevant to this whole conversation. And that's the idea that to be grateful for something doesn't mean you had to have loved it or love it. Like we've talked about, you can be grateful for some really shitty circumstances or experiences and so I don't see those two having to be like one and the same. You can have very uncomfortable feelings and be grateful that happened or that you experience that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, gratitude is a choice, and gratitude does create so much space to then be able to work through a situation or understand the learning in it. It also really leads to like an abundant approach to life and an abundant view of the world, right? Where it's like things don't happen to me, they happen for me. It's like I'm okay, right? And yeah, I have these challenges. So
I've got a question for you guys. I didn't think before we had this conversation how much we were going to talk about gratitude, and the other word I'm going to use is acknowledgement. How are they the same and how are they different? Like, how are they connected and how are they different?
That's a good question.
Because I'm starting to see like, hey, there's a real connection between these things, and there's probably some big differences too.
I mean, I'm just going to start with a very basic statement is I don't know if you can have gratitude without acknowledgement. Like you have to acknowledge things before you can truly be grateful.
Yeah. I would say this is how it comes to me is like acknowledgement happens here. Like acknowledgement is like very much like my eyes and my mind, where it's like making sense of something or recognizing something, acknowledging something. And gratitude happens. I don't know if I'm covering it up. Gratitude here. So I think that's the distinction, and they do go together, right? But I think acknowledgement is like the vision to see and understand something, and the gratitude is a choice to like to appreciate it, to value it. Whatever that thing you realized, understood, or acknowledged was, whether it be a circumstance, a person, a situation, a gift, an effort, someone serving you, right? Like you see it and understand it and acknowledge it here. And then like, I think the gratitude really comes in our heart to be like, I value that.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that too.
I correlate it to maybe some of those uncomfortable circumstances again that, you start by acknowledging, man, that was
That's tough.
wild.
Yeah.
That was tough. And then you can start to in your heart go, well, man, I learned a lot through the process.
So maybe acknowledgement, awareness precedes gratitude. And then maybe the next question,
I don't know that it's an absolute, but yeah.
How do you get acknowledgement? How do you gain awareness?
That is a big question.
This is a hard one for me to answer.
I wanted to ask you guys your thoughts.
Yeah. This is a hard one for me to answer because I feel like I've always been maybe hyper aware. And again, that's not an absolute. There's absolutely things I miss in my daily life still, whether that's interactions. But I also feel like I was also hypersensitive to scenarios and circumstances and for myself, really like dive in, think about it. What did I do wrong? What did, and so, yeah, this is an interesting thought. I'm curious to see what Matt says.
This might sound like a tangent. And one of the ways you can know you're not a narcissist is if you've ever wondered, am I a narcissist? Like
I still ask myself that question every day. Like
people, well then, yeah, you're good. Like people that are more truly narcissistic, like they've never stopped to ask themselves, like, I wonder if I'm narcissistic. So
well, I also think narcissism is a spectrum.
Well,
I think
for sure,
all are on it somewhere.
For sure. And like there's levels of narcissism that are actually healthy. Okay. Yeah. So, and we're not going to get into that today. Maybe we'll do another episode on that. My thought though is that like, I do think that I think awareness is a gift. And I think it can be developed, like, right. And that's where humans help each other so much, because it's like another human can actually help you see something that you can't see, and you can choose to be like open to it, and just that may increase your awareness in general and teach you and show you like, wow, I didn't know this thing before and I know it now, or I didn't believe this thing before and I believe it now, and look what it's done for me. So like, what are the other things out there that I'm not aware of, or that I don't know, that I want to know? So I think it's kind of both. Like I think awareness is a gift, because I agree, Tate, like I feel like I've always that's just kind of how I've been. Like, and especially in the last 3-4 years, I have practiced and exercised awareness, like intentionally.
Well, see, and I've got a little different take on it, and which I agree. I think it's a superpower in a lot of ways. But I also think it's probably hindered me in other ways. Because I feel like I'm so perceptive to certain circumstances, like it stops me from having a conversation because it's like, oh, they're not receptive. Yeah. And it's probably me overthinking that I perceive it as well as I do, but or they're not going to be interested because they XYZ, and that's again my overthinking part of some of this. So I think there can be some downsides to it, but I also think that exercising that muscle and just being courageous and a powerful leader, you can get to where you're talking, where it's much more of a powerful thing.
Well, so the thought I had that you kind of you guys kind of led us towards, it's like maybe awareness comes from leadership, or that's a way it can come, is it often, to become more aware, it takes someone pointing something out to you or helping you see something you couldn't see on your own. And I think you can do that for yourself, right? You can become self-aware. Like, you don't have to always have your wife point out the things you do wrong to realize there's things you do wrong. It can come from reading or asking yourself questions, or like it. So it doesn't always have to be necessarily someone else leading you. Maybe it's leading yourself. And yeah, maybe part of where awareness comes is someone stepping up and providing some leadership. So, and I think at the same time, I'm not suggesting that as a leader, your job's to make people aware of every flaw that they have. But that leadership might be helping people see something they couldn't see before.
Yeah. The thought that was coming as you were talking about that, and then you kind of really anchored on it there at the end, is I've noticed that some leaders are just exceptionally good at being able to deliver or say the right things to the right people at the right time. And maybe that criticism or constructive way. I just know that there's been some people in my life that, they can say things and it just stop you in your tracks, and then you're not as defensive about it. You're not as, and then there's other people that, whether that's relationships or anything else, it doesn't matter what they say. You're just going to be like, whoa, oh no, I don't like that. And back to the leadership conversation, I think that people develop that. Some people are more natural at it, but I also think it's just back to that bad decisions experience, good decisions. And I can say from my own experience, kind of tie into what I was just talking about, is I think sometimes I'm hesitant because I've stuck my foot in my mouth countless times. And it's like, wow, that was the right message. I saw it right, but I did not deliver that well. And so, you get a little gun shy, and it's overcoming that and figuring out how to show people that you're really interested, and that's why you're saying something, not because you're just trying to drag them down.
Yeah. Well, okay. My thought is, like, here's an action for everyone. This has been really useful to reflect on. What are the things that have happened, circumstances outside my control, that are challenging, that I can practice having gratitude for? And how could that then shift my relationship with that circumstance or that challenge? And so to our listener, invite you to do that today. Like, take some time to reflect. And again, this is like a really cool process of like acknowledging the things that are hard, challenging, and that are happening to you, to then shift into like, how are these things happening for me? How can I respond more powerfully to these circumstances outside of my control, and choose to be grateful for what they're teaching me, choose to be grateful for the opportunities they're providing me. And yeah, I mean, it can shift everything. Like, I also recognize that this can be like really impactful short term, like quickly. This can take something that's been really heavy for you for a long time, maybe, and all of a sudden you have a different perspective and belief around it, and can choose to be grateful for it. And that can open up a ton of space for progress and for growth.
So I want to ask Matt on that, just to make sure people are getting the right message in that, is what I'm hearing you say is, look at those circumstances and don't go to the obvious, like we all hear that, oh, okay, I just got fired from my job, but I still love my wife and my kids are amazing, or everything else. What I hear is you're saying, look more at that specific circumstance and find what there is to be grateful in what you learned through that circumstance. Not to say you shouldn't be grateful for your kids and wife all the time.
For sure. Yeah, totally. Another way to like identify it is just like something that's caused you suffering, something that's caused you just angst, frustration, stress, like weight on you. Go look at some of those and just acknowledge, like, okay, what's my relationship with this thing? It's probably not gratitude yet, right? If it's still causing you that, which is fine. And then how do we look at that? Like, wow, okay, What an opportunity for me. I choose to be grateful for this.
So I heard something interesting, and I have no idea if this is true. This was through another conversation, but they basically claimed that you can't blame and be grateful in the same circumstance.
Yeah, it's that,
and that there's still outside circumstances or outside our control that we can acknowledge. But when you're saying blaming something or someone, it's hard to turn and be grateful in that same moment.
Yeah, it's actually really challenging to feel a lot of things that are not useful when we're choosing gratitude. Yeah.
I'm grateful, Matt, that you've gone 35 minutes in this episode, because this is a long time for you.
Go me. You're welcome, everyone who's listening. And you're welcome because we're about to end and you probably are ready to go.
Well, good stuff, guys. I'm thankful. I am thankful for Thanksgiving. I feel like call me the Grinch, but I feel like sometimes Christmas lights go up too quick after Halloween, and I like to enjoy the Thanksgiving season and then the Christmas season. So I am very great. Christmas is my favorite time of year, and I'm very, very grateful that we have a time of year to reflect, to have gratitude. I'm grateful we talked about this topic of being grateful for things that maybe don't seem like the normal thing to be grateful for. I think it's good to reflect and acknowledge, hey, what are circumstances in my life that have actually maybe have been challenging, but have been very beneficial to me.
And I don't know the best way of saying this, but I encourage everybody to find ways to love themselves. I think that's really important. And if you can find that space, it makes so much of the rest of this conversation that much better.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. All right, everyone. Leadership is a choice. You always have a choice. Choose gratitude. And today's the day to start choosing it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us on the Everyday Leader podcast. If you're ready to take your leadership journey even further, subscribe to our weekly newsletter for more insights and practical tips. And don't forget to connect with us on Instagram to stay a part of our growing community. Just follow the links in the show notes. If this episode impacted you, please help us spread the word and share the link with a friend from wherever you're listening.